then we've also got to crack down on employers who knowingly hire illegal immigrants. And we've got to be sure that we're fair to taxpayers, and we've got to be sure that anybody who's working in this country pays the taxes that are owed.
I wanted to give you the opportunity, Senator.
And, you know,
Are you with us? Are you with us?
Yeah, uh-huh.
I wanted to give you the opportunity. Senator Dole has been running ads painting you as owning oil fields and that kind of thing. I wanted to give you the opportunity to defend yourself or say what's going on there.
Well, you know, concerning that, but I think we need to look at is that Senator Dole has taken close to $300,000 in money from big oil and gas companies. She and her husband have investments in an offshore hedge fund that speculates in oil. And yet, guess what? She did not vote to crack down on oil speculation. She voted for allowing the big oil and gas companies to keep $17 billion in tax incentives. Liddy Dole is the one who's in the pocket of big oil and, quite frankly, casting votes on the Senate floor that directly and personally benefit she and her husband. That's what she's been doing.
I got one more question for you. What's your opinion on the Second Amendment right to bear arms? We have a lot of listeners that is important to them, and I thought I'd just give you the opportunity to tell us what your position is on gun rights.
I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. My husband is an avid hunter. My children have lifetime hunting licenses. I will support the Second Amendment once I'm up in Washington. Don't worry about that. And I have time for one more question. I have a community health center meeting in Durham.
Well, my last question is, I know you said you had the information on your website. Energy is such an important subject to everyone these days. What would you do to affect an energy plan to lower prices today and prepare for the future?
Well, first of all, we've got to stop giving the big oil and gas companies $17 billion in tax incentives. We've got to start investing in renewable energy. There's a bill that's been proposed in the Senate. It was called the Gang of 10. And I agreed if I had been up there, it would have been a gang of 11. And it calls for making cars, much more high mileage cars, flex fuel cars, putting money into renewable energy. But it also would allow for offshore drilling off the southeastern United States. And I want you to know I am in support of that. And, I want people to know that Liddy Dole says I'm against it, but I am not.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us on The Real News. And in closing, I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell everyone how to get in contact with your campaign and anything else that you might want to add before you go.
Well, thank you very much. I'd love to talk to you anytime in the future. I have a website at www.kayhagen.com. I would ask your listeners to go onto my website and send us their email, sign up to volunteer. I'm excited about running in this race. I feel very good. The poll numbers are certainly trending in my favor. I truly want to go to Washington to work on your behalf.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Look forward to doing it again.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We're going to continue with what we were reporting, and then we're going to go to a break shortly, and after we come back from the break, we'll go to your phone calls. But following the collapse of Lehman Brothers, Patterson warned that 300 to 500 U.S. banks are set to fail over the next 3 years, as a result absorb all the FDIC's pool of funds. As was reported on Monday, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which guarantees individual accounts up to $100,000, only has about $50 billion to insure about $1 trillion in assets across the nation's financial institutions. Now, what that just said was they only have $50 billion to insure $1 trillion in assets across the nation's financial institutions. That's not good news. This has led top economists like Norel Rubini of NYU Stern School and RGE Monitor to openly warn that a slow-motion run on the banks is already occurring nationwide as individuals move their deposits to safer haven. Patterson has put the figure 300 to 500 bank failures, presuming that other well-known investment banks survive, something he said was not such a good assumption. Who could blame him for such negative outlook, writes Mark Rabin of the hedgefund.net. The markets are still reeling from the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeting more than 500 points on Monday on the 1-2-3 punch of Lehman Brothers declaring bankruptcy, Merrill Lynch being acquired by Bank of America and American International Group, the world's largest insurer, with $1 trillion on its balance sheet, on the verge of filing for bankruptcy protection itself, and now that has happened. Okay, people, we have been here since March 1st telling everyone that exactly what has happened this past week was definitely bound to happen. Bear Stearns, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Merrill Lynch, AIG. This is our federal government, either purposely or incompetently, but I believe the former, completely driving our economic ship right into the rocks. We know as a society great trade deficits hurt our workforce. We know insane legislation like NAFTA destroys our factories. The dumbest of the dumb can figure out that a currency backed by nothing printed out of thin air can't last indefinitely and remain strong. Everyone knows a $10 trillion national debt is financial suicide. But yet our government has done not just one, but all of these things to us, the working middle class. I'm here to tell you, like it is, really is, it should be considered an act of treason for any government or person in the government to so completely sell out its citizenry like has been done to us. All these bailouts are now your bailouts. We have been led by the Judas goats to the financial slaughter. We should never accept from our so-called leaders, Democrats and Republicans, this kind of complete failure to handle the monetary affairs of we the people. We're going to go to a break, and after that, we've got a couple of clips that we want to play for you from Glenn Beck Show this week concerning our financial situation, and then we're going to go to your phone calls. Our phone number is 873-1400, Davie County 336-499-0681. You can email us on air at therealnewsradio.com, and our website is therealnewsradio.com, and any of the clips that we play here on the air are on our website, so if you want to watch them in their entirety, you can. We'll be back in a second. Okay, we're back on The Real News. There's a couple of clips we wanted to play for you before we go to the phones, so just hold on to your phone calls for just a second because we want to not just tell you what we've got to say, but what some other politician and economic analysts have had to say this week on this financial collapse. So go ahead, Brian, and get us started on that.
This first clip is from the Glenn Beck Show from Thursday night. His guest that we're going to hear on here is Peter Schiff. He's the president of Euro-Pacific Capital. He's also a supporter of the Austrian economic types of principles. So we're going to go ahead and play that now.
Through this before. Peter, you agree? No, we haven't been through it. It's going to mean a lower standard of living for every American. We've been living in a phony economy. We've been buying things we couldn't afford with money we didn't have. This is a complete collapse of our financial institutions and our way of life. The reason that all these investment banks and banks are going broke is because Americans can't pay back the money they borrowed. And since we've been living on this consumer-based economy, when this credit collapses, Americans are not going to be able to borrow money to buy things.
Okay, so Peter, explain to me, because I still can't get my arms around. What does this mean for the average person? What is their life going to be like? Is it going to be like it was in the former Soviet Union in '89? Well, is it just going to be horribly miserable like under Carter? Well, or is it going to be like 1929 where we're selling apples?
I don't know how bad it's going to get, but the average American is never going to retire. Many Americans who are now retired are going to have to re-enter the workforce. Americans are going to be spending all their money on the basic necessities of life. We're not going to have money to buy new cars and new flat-screen TVs and new cell phones all the time. We're going to be living in a dramatically reduced standard of living. We're not going to be flying in airplanes as much. We're not going to be traveling. We're just going to have to get used to a lower standard of living because we've squandered our wealth. And unless we dramatically reduce the size of government, we'll never be able to get back to anywhere near what we used to have as an economy.
Do either one of you guys, I only have time for a yes or no, either one of you guys think that we have a candidate that will reduce the size of government?
That was what was reported this past week on Glenn Beck. I thought it was just astonishing, and we wanted to bring that to you. And we've got another clip that we want to play for you that on the same show Ron Paul was on, and that's Congressman from Texas that is very outspoken on our economic situation, and we want to go ahead and play that for you too.
Hello.